Welcome back to the second hour of our lecture. And so far, we were talking about the fifth point concerning the functions towards which every culture, the matrix of the culture we have been talking about. And at the diamond of the book, some of you can find this book. And this is the book that we are using. And if you can find the book, I think it will be more helpful for you to even glance at it. To round up the point five, based on our speaker or the book here, is that I want you to know that it's a people by adjusting their worldview devise means for resolving conflicts and reducing cultural dissonance. That is, in circumstances of cultural distortions or disequilibrium, there is a resilient quality to worldview by means of which people reconcile apparently irreconcilable differences between old understanding and the new understanding. If a society gets into ideological difficulty, it might not be easier to reinterpret values than to recognize society. That is what Wallace has been working towards in order to give us the idea of why Christianity in culture is important to our lives. Where mutual contradictions or contradictory cognition, which including perceptions, knowledge, motives, values, and hope, are entertained, the individual must act to reduce the dissonance. While theoretically, we can say he can do this by changing the real world in some perspective, so as to modify the data coming in. He or she or they may also achieve the same effect by modifying their perceptions of self and of the real world in such a way that one horns of the dilemma is no longer recognized. It's gone. No longer valuable. No longer appropriate. In extreme cases, this adaptation is changing perception, which is called for major replacement, and what Wallace called revitalization. But short of such drastic cultural surgery, the adaptation's quality of worldview is constantly in evidence in all sort of cultural change situations, whether these be mild or be what? Intensive. So as we do, we have seen the fifth point. We have seen the fifth point. They've seen the fifth point of our discussion. And that fifth point has given us so much about the perception in which conditions have been measured in a world wide. And having talked about these 5 points, we will now move ahead to the different assumption that could be, or this different assumption that leads to different conclusion when it comes to terms of cultural perspective. Now, when you have the book I showed you, You can check page 55 forward. You can see the topic and some of the explanations it was made. There is a good bit difference of similarity to human behavior in spite of our cultural differences in life. Similarities. Now, if I'm not sure how to compare between Africa and Asia. It can be similar. It's totally going to be different. But within an African context, you can see a similarity in our culture to human behavior in spite of our differences. So to say, also in Asia, in South America, in East Asia, on any kind of, you can see the similarity when it comes to such reality. Okay, there is even a considerable body of evidence, of evidence, of evidence to such or to suggest that human reasoning process are essentially the same no matter what one's culture is. All right. As I was saying in a nutshell, it is essential. Okay? It is essential to whatever the culture is. For this reason, it has been stated that humans differ not so much in the process by means of which they reach their conclusions as in their starting point. Okay? In their starting point. Now, when you look at the statement that just finished in the starting point. Now, it was said by Nida in 1960 in his book, The Fundamental Process of Reasoning, which is found in page 90 and 91. The fundamental process of reasoning of all people are essentially the same, but the promises on which such reason rests and the basic categories that influence the judgment of different people are somewhat different. So in the process of similarity as human, the judgment issue makes the different conclusion. Now, different worldview with the same idea but leads to a different conclusion based on individual judgment or as a group judgment or as a community judgment. When they decide and accept the situation, it becomes their judgment that influences and maintain the point in which they can pick up and practice in their certain environment. That is the member of different cultures arriving at different conclusions concerning the reality because they have started from different assumptions. They start from different assumptions, and because they started from different assumptions, then it becomes a different issue entirely to whatever it is being stipulated for their own reasoning. Note, for example, the conflict between underlying assumptions in every record. It's reasonable. Okay? It's reasonable if we can look about it and be able to talk about. So the fundamental reasoning is reasonable. Now, in Acts chapter 28, if you permit me, I just want to glance to it for us to see what it's saying. In Acts chapter 28, which I should be there before now, Acts 28, from verse 1 to 6, if possible, you can listen. It says, once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. the islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us as all because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a vapor driven out by the heat fastened itself on his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer, for though he escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." But Paul shook the snake off the fire into the fire and suffered no ill effect. And in verse 6 it says, "The people expect him to swell up and suddenly fall dead. But after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their mind and said he was a god." A god. There was an estimate nearby that belonged to published and chief officials of the islands. He welcomed us to his home and for 3 days entertained us hospitably. Now, people change their mind exactly when there is a new involvement or development to some certain crap of belief that people could have come across in their daily life. Now, Paul is somebody that we can count on. And in that where we count on, we can understand that whatever happens, he was able to address the situation. Okay? Paul and Barnabas had healed a lame man in the town of Lystra. When you look at Acts chapter 14, verse 8 to 18, a considerable commotion arose over the event because the Lystrans assumed that only the gods could effect such a healing. When they saw what happened, they concluded that Paul and Barnabas were gods and began to worship and offer sacrifice to them. The assumption in the apostolic minds, of course, was that by healing the lame man, they will enhance their witness in that place. Typically, non-Christian Americans observing such an event would be likely to conclude that Paul was simply a good psychologist, since they would assume a naturalistic, not a supernaturalistic explanations for such an event. Many cultures, however, teach those imams in them to show how more concerned for the ultimate causes than things and less concerned for details on how they come about. But before then, we can say that we therefore attempt to understand and describe the causes, or at least the fact involved in such phenomena as storms and weather in general, sickness and health, misfortune and success. If something happens, we are determined to at least find out how it happens, why it happens, when it happens, where it happens. Whether or not we can explain why, and these determinations to probe to analyze, to explain just come naturally to us because our culture assumes that it can and should be done. But the people of other culture stay from other assumptions concerning the universe and of course come out with very different conclusions. Their logic might be just as good or bad as ours, and they or the way they reason from assumptions to conclusions may be similar to the way you and I do it. But their basic worldview assumptions may be very different. Specific, their assumptions too may be just as valid as ours, but focus in on a part of the data that we ignore, we never care about, we don't even think about. Okay? For example, there is a great deal about the university that defies needs deceptions, even when the most precise Western scientific technology or techniques are applied. But we, in our faith in the ability of human science to master any and even and every problem, ordinarily choose to ignore the capricious, unpredictable aspect of the natural universe. In fact, one may say we are often so focused in on the how or immediate why of the happenings. Earthquake and other natural disasters, the geological records of prehistory, the match of human history, and so on, that we seldom concern ourselves with the ultimate why of the happenings. Ultimate why of the happenings. So, to this society, the universe seems a bit less predictable and understandable. They cannot be content simply to describe why a person got ill and not another. So disgusting, so worry, so problematic. Why others got problem, why others don't. And their concern leads them to regard the universe as basically capricious, rather in the hands of capricious personal beings and unpredictable. If there is a tragedy, it is due to the whim or displeasure of a personal spirit. Radios, automobiles, airplanes, etc. Likewise, may be understood to have come about due primarily to the whims of a supernatural being who chose to give to certain people the knowledge and skill to produce them, for they must assume only God could give people the ability to perform such wonders. The fact that the members of such culture start with a different set of assumptions from ours determines that they will arrive at a conclusion different from ours. As members of an initial or individualistic Western culture, Americans are increasingly concerned that up to the present women have not been regarded as equal to men. We define equality in terms of the right of a person to move freely, both geographically and socially, to compete freely for employment or for leadership, to speak out freely, to be free from tax that we regard our drudgery, that is, we link equality with freedom. We judge that man or men have heretofore been allowed greater freedom than women. And we conclude, therefore, that the positive of women is unequal to that of men, since it is not the same with respect to the passions or possessions of individual freedom. In order to solve the problem, we seek equality or to equalize the positions of the sexy vis-a-vis this single criterion of equality, and giving out basic assumption. This is directions in which we must move. So now, but suppose we, like a large number of the world's cultures, assume that the most valuable things a culture can give to its women is not freedom but security. Is it true? I believe so. It's true that we can have that as part of us. Whereas we might say a woman is so valuable as an individual that she should be just as free as possible. Such a society might reason a woman is such a valuable member of society that she should be made just as secure as possible. Starting from this latter assumption, these cultures frequently conclude that women must be provided with few things that it's important in their life. Forgive me that I should have given you this in really written form or in on the board, but I think I couldn't, or I forgot to address these. Put it down on the PPT, but if you pay attention, you can get it. Let me take it again. That starting from this later assumption, these cultures frequently conclude that women must be provided with, number one, security, a secure marriage and home, meaning secure often by such custom as bride price, polygamy, and the levirate. Okay, so now the security of marriage is that when a woman is married, sometimes she's denied the right of being the mother of the house, and sometimes some people married and other people to bring them in, and then she has no right to talk about anything. So they have to share the view and other things when it comes to that. The security of our marriage is not there because someone has broken in with a concept of the one who brought her in. The custom, like most of the time, people who don't pay bride, they just got married to some people, maybe by pregnancy or by stealing them, or when they come to stay and then something happened, they refuse not to go back. And when they don't pay the bride price, it becomes a problem. Okay, that is so difficult. And the polygamy I talk about, which is marrying more than one wife, security is not there. We need to look for what it takes to be. The second point we need to talk about is women must be provided with a relatively routine and restricted set of expected achievement in order that achievement. What kind of achievement will you give the woman? because in order that it's going to be the point 3. The second one is a relatively routine and restricted set of expected achievement for them. Now, we don't see anything happening to women as achievement. Giving birth to children should be achievement for them, because a problem occurs most of the time when people are married and staying more than 5 years, there's no child, it becomes a problem. And so we need to understand that situation. It's not vulnerable, it's not perfect, it's not accepted. We must be careful, because women are really tense and they are not secure when it comes to that. Like I said, the second point is relatively routine and also restricted set of expected achievement, which in order that, number 3, she may in turn provide the maximum of security for the newest and most vulnerable member of the society. That means the child in which that she gave birth. They have all right, they have all potential to take care of those children. That's why they are called mother. A mother is someone who mother or train or care or nurture or provide something for the person. Yes, father is the head, mostly virtually the head, overseer, the provider. But how can you maintain without the mother? So the mother maintains, and that is why women should be given all those guarantees that we have just read to you. In such society, equality between the sexes means the provisions of different things for men and women. Security for women, freedom for men. There seems to be no feelings of compulsion on the part of those or these society to give both men and women the same kinds of things, since they regard male and female role as complementary, same kind of things, complementary, okay, non-overlapping. So whichever thing you said, really, men are doing good, men also are doing good, because sometimes without women, whatever that part is missing, it is not complete. How about you? Culture warrants change, transformation, transparent, uniqueness, and what? Vulnerability. Are we willing to offer that to our women and also to men in order to protect all that we have, in order to build our community and our culture will maintain? Having been here with me for the second hour, I appreciate you being part of it. Please stay tuned as we return back for our third hour to learn more.